Welcome to our live edition of the Minnesota basketball party on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Today, I will probably petition for Jordan McLaughlin being the league MVP. That's coming up next on the Minnesota basketball party.
This is Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Timberwolves talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota basketball party on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
So glad you joined us today here on Locked On Sports Minnesota. We are live in the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Get us to 8,000 subscribers here at Locked On Sports Minnesota. You might be watching us live. You might be watching us after the fact, and you might be listening to us on the Locked On Wolves audio feed where Ben Beacon produces Locked On Wolves Monday through Friday for deep dives daily on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Today, we've got a four-man panel talking about the Wolves' win over the Houston Rockets, a nice bounce back from the setback against Chicago. We, of course, will get into the ownership squabble, which feels like it's been going on forever, but really it just broke last Thursday, so we've yet to get a chance to discuss it on this show, and we'll look at the Western Conference as it shakes out now and how the Wolves' win in Denver changes our perspective on what they can do in the postseason. But let's meet our full crew with the opening tip.
I'm Ron Johnson, former Gophers and NFL wide receiver. And if you saw that early shot, that was a hook shot that I made into the trash can. No look. But I'm going to talk to you guys today about why Nasre Reed deserves to be the sixth man of the year.
I'm Jack Borman, co-host of the Locked On Wolves postcast with my man Luke Inman, editor-in-chief at Canis Hoopus. And I'm going to talk also about Nasre Reed's six-man candidacy, but also kind of why Nas defines the spirit of the award, despite being a little bit different of a candidate than we normally see.
I'm Reggie Wilson, sports director at Care 11. And look, I know the Wolves are in the midst of a chase for that number one seed, but I kind of think Anthony Edwards needs a bit of a breather.
And he's got a back-to-back tonight against the Toronto Raptors. What do you know? We'll see which Ant shows up. But yeah, we'll get into the Anthony Edwards we're seeing right now. There's a lot of compelling individual performances right now with the Wolves. Nasre Reed, of course, we're going to talk about his sixth man of the year candidacy. I want to talk about Jordan McLaughlin. I want to talk about Jaden McDaniels. I just want to talk about all these guys that are sort of contributing in aggregate to make up for the loss of Karl Anthony Towns and doing a pretty nice job. Here's where the Wolves stand after last night's 113-106 win against Houston. They are half a game back of the Nuggets in the West. They are tied with the Thunder. It's coming down to the final 6 or 7 games. Wolves have a chance, again, to gain a half game on the Nuggets tonight if they beat Toronto, and the Thunder have a tough game against the Celtics. I'm not sure these teams will be separated by more than a game the rest of the way. It's probably coming down to April 14th in the season finale, but every game counts for the Wolves right now, and that means beating the Houston Rockets last night, even though it wasn't the most scintillating, the most beautiful performance. Ron Johnson, will start with you. The Wolves had to have it. They have to have all of these sort of winnable, quote-unquote, games against 500 teams, below 500 teams. They can't afford any slip-ups if they want to win the West.
Yeah, and so when you look at the team right now and the way, and you said it, there's no gap in the break of how like these teams are going to play, these top three at least. And we kind of talked about it on my show yesterday, on the Ron Johnson show, that the top three are kind of set, and then the bottom three are semi-set, and then that 4 or 5 is kind of the weird, like you don't know where they're going to land. But with the Timberwolves, and I like where Reggie was going with that too. With the Timberwolves, the tough part about where they're at now is you're past load management. Like you're past the time where you can figure out like, who can I sit? Who can I rest? Because they're in a dogfight. And when you look at the standings, it's going to come down to who doesn't want to play the Suns. And again, I'm probably a little bit more worried about it than teams are, but Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, I don't want to see them get hot, because once they get hot and they're in a game for their life, you can see them absolutely come to life and just take off. This season has been weird because I think a lot of people coasted assuming they're just going to be in the playoffs, and nobody expected, I think we talked about this with Michael Grady, Sam, nobody expected the Timberwolves Thunder to be where they are right now. And nobody expected the Warriors to be where they are right now, and the Suns even, and the Mavericks. I mean, come on now, Kyrie and Luka. But it's the NBA is kind of taking a full flip on its head. The Nuggets are still the Nuggets. They were champions last year. But I think the biggest takeaway for me with this team is going to be figuring out who can be that extra guy. And Nasre Reed, showed it last night. He has to continue to be that guy until Karl-Anthony Towns is back. And even once he's back, he has to still take on that type of play, because in order to do that right now, they're not going anywhere. Everybody's going to keep winning. They're going to take a hiccup somewhere. But the Timberwolves losing after beating the Nuggets, to me, that was the weirdest thing ever. Again, they bounced back and won last night, but even in the start of that game, I was a little worried. Like I think it was the first quarter they were down, and then I was like, "Oh, here we go again. They're about to play down to there." And then again, I checked in the second half, and they were up. And so that's what they have to do, though. They can't let any team feel like they're in these games, because I think once they put a gap between them, then they can just coast and maybe get Anthony Edwards on the bench for a little bit, let him get some rest. But if he has to play entire games, it's going to be tough going into the first round.
Yeah, I don't know if Anthony Edwards even was he playing in the first half last night, because it didn't seem like it. It was a sleepwalking first half, and then he showed up, made his free throws and some very highlight reel worthy dunks late in that game. But Jack Borman, you were on the postcast with Luke Inman reacting to last night's game. What were some of your biggest takeaways?
Yeah, my one of my biggest takeaways, kind of what Reg was going to say, is I don't think Ant should play tonight. I think that the Timberwolves legitimately would have a better chance of winning the three games that really, really matter: the Suns game, the Lakers game, and the Nuggets game. If you were able to buy Ant a night off, the Raptors have lost 14 games in a row. They just played last night, got destroyed by Reggie's Lakers. And if you can't win that game at home, you probably don't deserve to be without Ant. You probably don't deserve to be the 1 seed anyways. But for last night specifically, it's just another game where the Wolves really struggled to score. Their starting five really struggled to score against teams that another team that switches. In the start of the first quarter, they got off to a really slow start, had their lowest scoring first quarter of the season with 16 points. Start of the third quarter, they scored 9 points in the first 6 minutes, which is not what you want from your starting five. And then in crunch time, they scored 2 points over a 5-minute stretch from about 7:45 to 2:45 when Nas hit that huge three that pretty much ended up kind of helping them win the game. And you look at some of the potential playoff opponents that they'll play that like to switch. I mean, the Pelicans like to switch when Valanciunas isn't on the floor. The Suns like to switch, at least the 4 guys in the perimeter, not Nurkic. The Lakers will absolutely switch in the playoffs, and the Warriors will absolutely switch when it really matters. And, that's another reason why I think, Timberwolves fans are really hoping that in some way, shape, or form, I don't know how it would happen, what the seeding would work out to be if the Wolves would be able to play the Kings, is that the Kings are a team that, are not going to switch unless they have Trey Lyles on the floor in place of Domantas Sabonis, but that probably won't happen unless Sabonis gets in foul trouble. So, and then the other big one for me was the start of the second and fourth quarters were a huge weakness for the Timberwolves in January when they were really struggling to win games, and they were really struggling in the fourth quarter especially. But now those parts of games have been a huge strength for the Wolves. The McLaughlin, Conley, Anderson minutes have been a godsend for this team in terms of having a bunch of different playmakers on the floor to get the ball going, infuse just some kinetic energy in the offense, which has been really important. And we've seen Nickeil Alexander-Walker join that trio over the last 9 games or so. And they've been a plus 13.4 net rating in those last 9 games pretty much, which is in the 98th percentile among all lineups in the league. And it's just like I said, they get the ball moving, they play off of each other really well. And that's exactly what you need to do when you don't have a number 1 lead scorer on the floor out there with you, because you don't have Ant, you don't have Nas. Generally, you don't even have Jaden McDaniels half the time. And they take care of the ball. They have an assist to turnover ratio north of 4, which is incredible. And their true shooting percentage, that those 4 when they're out there together, is 70%, which is well above the league average at 58%. So the way that they're able to create momentum for the starting lineup to come back in and close the game and close the half in the first half too has been really important, and has been, I think, a huge reason why they've been able to stay afloat in the race for the 1 seed without Karl-Anthony Towns since he got hurt.
Yeah, it's just so important that group comes on the floor, and generally they don't turn the ball over, which is such an issue for this team. And it was again last night. Anthony Edwards was sloppy. He was forcing shots. And then Reggie, he shows up right when they need him It's like he turns it on for that short amount of time and he says, that's all I got for you. I got a 6-minute surge and I can get you over the hump and win you this game. But, I mean, Jack pointed it out. Reggie, you think he needs a night off too. He's fighting it right now. Hasn't made a 3 in the last 3 games.
Yeah, hasn't made a 3 since Detroit and went 1 of 4 from 3 from there. And it's crazy because you want to say, oh, Ant doesn't have any legs. But then the fourth quarter would seem to prove otherwise with those dunks. Like, he came through the lane and just yammed on him. Michael Grady, once again, lost his mind. His calls always meet the moment. And then he also went forth, off the steal, right back down the court, dunked again. And so it's tough to say. But what's interesting is Jack and I are both kind of aligned that he needs a bit of a breather. Yeah, he probably should sit this second night of a back-to-back. But what's crazy is like, we are so critical of this Wolves team because they are actually good. Like, they're good. And they don't have Cat. And Ant hasn't been playing the best basketball over the last several games of his career. And you're like, but they should be winning these games. Like, I sat there on Easter watching that game against the Bulls, and I'm just like, what are they doing? This game is one, especially after they came back and closed the deficit, got the lead, and then the Bulls just kind of turned it on down the stretch, and they went cold. The Wolves went cold shooting, and you're just like, they should have won this game. But isn't it crazy how much our standards have just raised for this team? And they've clinched the playoff berth, don't have to go to the play-in for the 3rd straight year. And we're just like, yeah, but this team should be playing better. And, I don't know if Jack agrees with me, but like, even without Ant playing tonight, I would expect them to win the game against the Raptors. And it's just kind of crazy to think that you could be without 2 of your superstars, 2 of your all-star players, and still be expected to win on a night-to-night basis in the NBA. But I think it's kudos to Nasre Reed, who's made the most out of his starting time. I think it's kudos to, especially last night, Slow-Mo and Jordan McLaughlin, 24 points off the bench. That helps as well. And then you got guys like Conley stepping up. Not necessarily the offensive performance from Jaden McDaniels that we, thought that he was surging towards, but he was doing his part. And the Rockets are not necessarily a slouch team. Like, this is a team that's been surging, trying to take that last playoff spot from the Warriors for that play-in tournament. So, like, they're playing well. Jalen Green kind of had a bit of a Kobe/Ant like stat line with his inefficiency from the floor last night, but he's an ascending player. I think, Ron kind of got into his personal situation last time we talked about them. We won't go there, but he's got some grit about him because it's that dad, that future dad strength coming out. So that Rockets team is not an easy team to beat by any stretch. And so we are looking at these Timberwolves teams like, hey, they should be winning on these nights. And like I said, in the open, paying off the tees, like, I understand that they are in a hot race for that top spot. Before that Nuggets game last night went final, all 3 of those teams at the top were tied at 52 and 23. And so, like, I tweeted, like, yeah, I think this is just going to come all the way down to the wire for that top spot. So it seems kind of nonsensical to sit Ant, but I think it would be for a greater gain to kind of gain some like, I understand his legs are still there because he's dunking out of control, but like, if you look at him shooting threes and all that, like, he has no like lift. He's not shooting it like we've come accustomed to him shooting it, and he's not getting the results either. I think Jack said he's missed his last 22 threes. That's crazy. That's crazy. And they're still in these games and they're still winning these games. And so I think sit him for a bit, let him get a breather, get his legs a little bit underneath him a little bit more, and still continue to try to chase that top spot.
Fortunately, the Wolves will get 6 or 7 days off after the regular season before their first playoff series. That's going to be where you got to rest, get off your feet, man, get a breather. Let's give some flowers to Jordan McLaughlin, maybe the best player in the NBA. His offensive rating is a mere 137 this year. Guess what he's shooting from three since February 1st? 62.8%. And that's a 2-month stretch of like hitting 2 out of every 3 3-point shots. It's incredible what he's doing right now. And he's almost made Monty Morris like irrelevant because he's just, you can't take him off the floor. Good things happen when J-Mac is out there. I love watching him play right now. And he's going to get playoff minutes. I mean, this is not like a regular season bit. He's going to be valuable in the postseason. So I'm really into the J-Mac vibe right now. I'm not into ownership squabble vibes. We'll talk about that whole fiasco next on the Minnesota Basketball Party. We're brought to you today by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need, the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Wolves Talk every Wednesday here in the Minnesota Basketball Party. Minnesota Football Party goes live Mondays and Thursdays. The Ron Johnson Show on Tuesdays. Roundtable on Fridays. Last Thursday, the Wolves ownership squabble began. Glenn Taylor announced the team was no longer for sale. He went on his media junket to tell everybody that Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez didn't have the money. Then the next day, Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry went on their own media circuit and said Glenn is a traitor. They used the word traitor. And they do have the money. And it's in an ironclad contract, and they will fight tooth and nail for the next decade if they have to. Jack Borman, I'm sure you've written about this at length. You've talked about it at length on the postcast. But now that we're 6 days out, I guess, how are you feeling now that you've seen a lot of the shrapnel, thrown in different directions, a lot of the quotes and fallout? What's your take now, almost a week later?
Yeah, I still just think it's really bizarre that no one had the scoop on this. Not Woj, not Shams, not any local reporter. That Glenn Taylor just put out a press release through the two organizations about what was going on, and no one had any wind of this, especially since, what was it, a week or 10 days prior to that, Woj tweeted that Mark and Alex had all their funding in line and had submitted all this paperwork to the league. You thought, all right, we're good to go. But yeah, I mean, for me, where I am is I just think that we have to wait and see what the legal proceedings are going to be, right? Because I just personally, I want the original agreement to be honored regardless of who ends up being in the right, who ends up being in the wrong. I think contracts are wildly important, and breaching contracts, is a really dangerous thing to do, especially on this level. If that happened, like if A-Rod and Lowry violated the agreement, are we really sure that they're going to have the funds to not only buy the team, but to operate it year in and year out? And then the other hypothetical is like, if Glenn violated the contract, like that seems just crazy. Considering that, you violate it now and not, earlier on when there were more questions about, where this group was going to get the money and how they were going to, be able to do all this, and doing it right now when the team is where it is kind of crazy if A-Rod and Lowry did not in fact violate the contract. But I think from where I sit, it's hard not to want fresh ownership, considering Glenn's track record over the last, 3 decades. A-Rod and Lowry said that they drove the bus on the Conley hiring, in which Glenn they said, Glenn said, people like that don't come here. And then after the Conley hiring, you had the Gobert trade and the Conley and Nickeil Alexander-Walker trade, the Mike Conley extension, all these different things that have really, raised the level of this team and brought this fan base, into Target Center in a way that I personally have never seen before in my lifetime. I'm 25 years old. And then the last part of it as well is that, I think so many of the positive changes that you've seen around the team, around the organization in the last couple of years have all mostly been driven by A-Rod and Lauri. And regardless of, whether that or not those two guys are in the wrong in any capacity here in the contract dispute, I think it's a little odd that Glenn is trying to take all this credit for it when he pretty clearly was not a fan of any of those decisions when they were being made. And now that he's seen some of the fruits of those decisions, is trying to take credit for it is pretty slimy in my opinion. And regardless of whether or not A-Rod and Lauri violated any type of contract, they still own 36% of the team. And the fact that Glenn Taylor is icing them out, not letting them into Target Center, not letting them have conversations with any Timberwolves or Lynx employee, any of the players, coaches, executives, anything like that. That's just no way to treat your limiteds, regardless of what has gone on. And it just, I think, is a sign that, this thing is gotten, a lot worse underneath the surface than it already is on the surface. And it looks pretty bad on the surface.
Either Glenn is really bad at this game. Like, Glenn is going to lose the PR battle 10 out of 10 times because he's not good at expressing his side in public. He did all the radio interviews. He didn't hide his hand at all and seem naive to the fact that this would be a problem. Like, oh yeah, we'll just carry on as we've always carried on with them as limiteds.
Someone asked if he was disappointed by it, and he said no, which is crazy. Like, how could you not be disappointed by this 3-year process that you've had not working out?
Yeah, it's incredible. And he incriminated himself terribly by basically admitting that he did this because the sale value likely is increased of the franchise. I'm curious, and I don't understand this part. A-Rod and Lauri make it sound as if this contract is ironclad, that there is clear verbiage that says you're entitled to a 90-day extension if you submit the paperwork to the league. So if it's that easy, if it's that clear in the contract, what leg is Glenn standing on? Or are A-Rod and Lauri maybe softening things in their, approach with the media? Are they changing the story a little bit on their end of what obligations they've fulfilled? I just don't know how there's any ambiguity for something this big, in the contract language. But Reggie, I mean, this thing is just getting started. I think there's a lot more to uncover.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was listening to all of what was said, and number one, I was like, this is messy. And number two, I was like, dang, it's gotten petty as well. And look, of interest of continuing to cover the Timberwolves and Lynx franchises moving forward, I will be towing the line here. But it does seem like nasty work to have an agreement for something and then you're like, never mind. I'm just gonna take that back. And it's really tough to just kind of see it play out. Like, for one, this has been a super long process. I remember when I first started here at Care 11, that introductory press conference at Media Day with A-Rod and Lauri there with Glenn Taylor. It was just like, oh, okay, like this thing is moving forward. This thing is going on. Like, okay, this is really cool. This is like my first few months on the job that this is happening. Here we go, fast forward to 2024, and we're at this, I wouldn't call it conclusion because it seems to be far from over, but we're at this point in the mud. Like, I just don't understand how we got here. Like, it seemed like everything was trending the way that Glenn kind of wanted it, so that he just like slowly but surely gave up his control. And then everybody's like, well, no, it was set up like that because A-Rod and Lori didn't necessarily have the money. A-Rod and Lori, like, look, we ain't no broke boys. Like, we got the money, like we're just following the agreement and the protocol that was put in place that all parties accepted. And then, man, I thought it was really interesting when A-Rod was saying that when they first started to go into business with Glenn and do this deal, he said there were a lot of people that were hitting him up like, hey, like, you better make sure you get some good attorneys in tow because, yeah, Glenn is something else. And he's just like, no, Glenn and Becky have been great to us. Like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. And then he said now that Glenn kind of reversed course like that, all those same people who hit him up before were blowing up his phone this time saying like, see, that dude can't be trusted. And it's just, I think Jack made a point that was very key to me, is these dudes are still in business with each other. It's not that like they called off the sale and then A-Rod and Lori can walk away. Like, no, like they've kind of set some benchmarks in place already to where they own an ownership stake in this team already. And now they're not playing ball. You're icing them out of the arena. You're icing them out from talking to coaches, players, and staff. What is going on? Like, why is it so messy? And also, one of the best seasons that the Timberwolves have had in years, in decades. And now they're dealing with this behind the scenes. Like, why can't they just have nice things?
Ron Johnson, you weighed on this a little bit on the Ron Johnson show, but what's your take on Lori versus Glenn Taylor?
I mean, I'm going to be quick here. Jay-Z said this best. Men lie, women lie. Numbers don't. Lil Wayne also said this. F is for Phoenicia, because somebody's going to finish this. And so basically, Weezy F baby.
Sir.
F is for Phoenicia, because somebody's going to finish this. And here's where I go with this. We're talking billions here. We're not talking $100,000. We're talking billions. And so I don't know who's got the F in their name, who's going to finish this, but I know who started this. And Glenn Taylor started it. It's his team. And so here's the thing about money. I'm not even going to argue for which side is right. We talk about $1.5 billion that he could possibly add on by forcing these guys out of this contract. Now, if they did their 30-day deal and did the league approve whatever, like you have to write us a letter and get an extension. If they have an extension, it's ironclad and the law is the law. So that's where we stand. But I mean, come on now. If they don't come through and then he's like, hey, if y'all still want it though, y'all can have it for $3 billion. Like, hey, we talking about bees here. So I'm not hating on Glenn Taylor. Like, I get it. That's a lot of money. Like, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of blue chewables. That's a lot of, like, you can get a lot of stuff with another 1.5 billion. And so I'm not hating on Glenn Taylor. Like, I get it. But also for A-Rod, again, and I said this on our show, if I was Glenn Taylor, I'd be coming to A-Rod like, yo, if Lori don't come through, man, I'll still let you in. And me and you, let's me and you be the owners. You be the face. I'll still be behind it with the money, and you help me get some free agents in here. Because, I mean, I think that he wants to be a part of a winner. They haven't won in a while, and now they're like top 2 teams in the NBA. That could be a little bit of the buyer's remorse for him, or the seller's remorse.
Mm-hmm. How did you arrive at blue chewables? Like, you've got an extra 1.5
every
billion.
Every time. I don't know how he has these. I thought my analogies were crazy. Ron's take the cake.
Like Lake Minnetonka.
Getting to Wheezy F baby within 10 seconds of that question being thrown out was incredible work.
Yeah, Lake Minnetonka, he could have an extra boat and just have somebody like Farnsworth Bentley, shout out to Diddy, Farnsworth Bentley carrying an umbrella for him. The rest is like, we're not doing Diddy though. We're not doing Diddy here. But you know what I mean? He could have a body man like Barack, like the president has when they have a body person. Like Glenn Taylor with a 1.5 billion. I mean, he's already old too, so like he doesn't have to like live too much longer with the money he's gonna have. He could do all kinds of extravagant things with that $3 billion. And so I get it. Like I extremely understand it. And so hey, and I think I saw this on ESPN, or maybe Sam, you brought this up. the fact that like they have to build a stadium or, whatever, they can force the stadium build, and if the city doesn't want to build it, they can move the team. Well, with 1.5 billion additional, he can come up with a plan for that and say, hey, look, I'll help with the stadium bill, and I want to own maybe the rights to the stadium, but I'm letting the team go. And now, you become the real estate guy like the Vikings owners.
This is the one area where you could make a case that you could be on Glenn's side here, is that Glenn is a total Minnesota loyalist. He is not going to force the team to move. That would never be an issue with Glenn. And I think Lori and A-Rod have been very clear that they don't intend to move the team either. And if you take them at their word, then you probably feel pretty good. But they also haven't been met with resistance to having a stadium built yet. And we don't know how they would respond to that. So that's the one area where you might feel a little more secure with this team in Glenn's hands. I'm not saying I sympathize with Glenn or I'm on Glenn's side, but you can make that case. We got a quick word, and then we're going to
I wonder what J-Lo would say, because like she knows A-Rod. I wonder if she would say take A-Rod for his word. Like I would love to get J-Lo's thoughts on this.
A-Rod, impeccable for always telling the truth and being honest in all of his professional endeavors. Never had a slip up. We got a speed round coming up next on the Minnesota Basketball Party, which is brought to you today by Amazon Fire TV, your destination for sports. From live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, Fire TV offers incredible viewing experiences with smart TVs and a Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV to provide access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. It's a great deal. You got to check it out. Whether it's opening week of baseball, the college basketball tournament, Final Four coming up, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. They recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands. And again, that's all for free. So little is free in today's economy. You got to check out Fire TV channels that are giving you the best sports, the best analysis, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, all of that with Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. All right, speed round on the Minnesota Basketball Party. Ron Johnson, Jack Borman, Reggie Wilson. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Thanks for joining us here in the comments. We appreciate that. And here in the live feed, you can also find us on the Locked On Wolves podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. Sixth man of the year talk for Nasre Reed. Malik Monk, who was the runaway favorite to win this award, he got hurt. And on FanDuel, that totally changed the odds, where now Nasre Reed is a very, very close second just behind Malik Monk. The irony is that he's closed the gap as a starter on the Timberwolves. He's been a reserve in 65 games. He started 9, but suddenly Nasre Reed feels like he could win this thing. Let's start with Reggie Wilson. You've got 1 minute to make your argument. Nasre Reed, sixth man of the year?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that NBA is all about numbers. Like, I get that. It's all about numbers. But I also see that it's about vibe, and it's also about just overall like fit. And I think Nas has done everything. I was just talking to someone about this the other day. Like, he's a textbook case study on just how you come into the league and just continue to improve your game year after year. And now you've gotten a bag like he did in the offseason. And now he comes into the game and does whatever you need him to do. You know, I think Ron last week was talking about, being positionless, and he's a center that can handle the ball, and he can score like a microwave whenever you put him in. He's a spark off the bench. And I just think there's a lot to be said about his contributions to the game. The plus minus when he's in the game is always off the charts. So I give him six man on that alone. And then I do think that his numbers also back it up.
Ron Johnson.
Again, back to Jay-Z numbers. When men lie, women lie, numbers don't. I'm gonna be real quick off the top, freestyle. Nasre Reed right now, 24 minutes, 13 points, 48% field goal percentage, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, and 1 block. The biggest difference in him in the last 11 winners, there were only 2 other times where somebody had last year, Malcolm Brogdon, he was like a 48.4% field goal shooter. Nasre Reed has had the second best field goal percentage since like the last 11 years. Sorry. And so when you think about that, Malik Monk, quote unquote, was a starter. I feel like he kind of lost his job, where we're talking about a young 4th-year guy coming into his own. I think he deserves to be the 6th man because he is a true 6th man. Malik Monk is almost like Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook, I can't consider him a 6th man because you came to a team to be a starter. It didn't work out. And so I get it. Like, this is the part of the game. If you come off the bench, you come off the bench. But let's not forget, Malik Monk was a starter in that system before. And so that's why I think Nasre Reed, I think Reggie said it, to the true spirit of the award, Nasre Reed fits it. Malik Monk, to me, feels more like a starter when you look at the minutes played. And that's why I would go with Nasre Reed.
Jack.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing about Nasre Reed is that he has missed 1 game all season, which is really, really important when you talk about the consistency factor that a lot of these great 6 men have. And Nas was awesome in one role that he had to play for the first 62 games of the season, and then was completely asked to change his role and be a 1-for-1 swap in a player that was an all-star this season. And to do that this late in the year and he's increased his points per game from 12.3 to 18.5 as a starter, while maintaining this pretty much the same efficiency in his field goal percentage and 3-point percentage, and then adding 2 more rebounds, doubling his assists while pretty much keeping his turnovers the same and being more active defensively, I think is something that absolutely needs to be part of the conversation. Because in my mind, part of being a 6th man is that when some guy in the starting 5 gets hurt, you're the next guy up. And you can't expect that all 5 of those guys are going to play all 82 games, right? And so most of these 6 men by nature are going to start some games. And Nas hasn't just, started games admirably, but he has absolutely stepped up and filled the shoes of Karl Anthony Towns better than I think anybody thought he could. And for him to do that while also keeping in mind the context of helping this team stay afloat in the race for the number 1 seed, I really think that needs to be factored in as much as anything when you're talking about this race. And I think with a lot of these award races, it's a lot about, narratives forming after the first 40 games or 50 games, and then they just don't change. I think, it's important, especially in this race, that voters really consider the context of what's happened the last, 2 months of the season.
Yeah, I mean, Malik Monk has an insane offensive ceiling. The Wolves saw it firsthand. He beat the Timberwolves single-handedly back on, I think, March 1st. And he's got a ton of games this year with like 25 points or more. I mean, he is a pure volume scorer, and he's very different from Nasre Reed in that sense, because when Malik Monk is on the floor, it's like, all right, Malik, do your thing. Just like go to town. You've got the keys, run the show, score the points, and let's get De'Aaron Fox back out here in 5 minutes. Nasre Reed's a more efficient player. Nasre Reed's a better shooter from the floor and from 3. He's got like the same offensive rating as Malik Monk. Defensive rating is 10 points better. He's got fewer turnovers. He rebounds more, higher win share. Now, Malik Monk is going to create more. I mean, he is very ball dominant. He's going to get more assists. He's going to create a lot of points. Nasre Reed does it in a little more of a complementary role, but I'm team Nas as well. I think Nas is just a more well-rounded player than Malik Monk, and he kind of does more with less with what he's asked to do. Round 2 of the speed round, 1 minute each. We'll start with Reggie this time. The win over the Nuggets on Friday, was that a sign to you that the Wolves could go toe-to-toe with Denver if they meet in the postseason?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw it in the postseason last year. I know it only went 5, but I think the Wolves gave them a very competitive series, and it seems like they were like on the precipice of like really kind of being a team that can challenge them. And I think, if you get Cat back and you're at your full weaponry, I think they're a team that could go toe to toe with the Nuggets. I think it's a tough matchup for Denver playing Minnesota. And so, you know, you talk about, you know, Nas coming off the bench, and, you know, if Ant kind of blossomed into, you know, level one superstar status last year in the postseason with the performances that he put up. I think he willed that team to that victory that they did have against Denver. And so I could see them definitely taking that all the way to like a 7-game series against the Nuggets.
Ron Johnson, Wolves and Nuggets. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they split right now. They got to play again. I easily think they can, and at full strength as well. Like, that's the thing. I think Anthony Edwards kind of showed the world that he can do it. He can put the team on his back if he needs to. You add another superhero to that group, and Karl Anthony Towns. Now, again, coming off this injury, what does he look like? How does he feel? Is he going to be truly ready to go? Is he going to trust his body to do what it says it should do? That's going to be the key. And then also, can they pull the plug if it's not working? Like, if he comes in and the chemistry is just not there, do they have the like, I was going to use a word I can't use on this show, but do they have the stones to like say like, hey, okay, you got to come out, like, this is not working, Nas, you're in, or whoever, because like that's what you don't want to do, is script the chemistry. But yeah, I think they can definitely go toe to toe with the Nuggets. And I think at the end of the day, if you can put the Nuggets down 2-0 even, and really take advantage of whoever has home field, you know, keep home court advantage to your side, I think the Timberwolves can pull it off. Also, I don't know where Glue Gal is at, but if she's looking for something to do, glue yourself to the court, because every time she did that last year, I think they won. So let's make sure we get her back.
I enjoyed the memes of the Glue Gal photo, except with Glenn Taylor's face gluing himself to the Target Center court. That was pretty good.
He's doing that now. He's like, you should get the lock guy. Remember the guy that locked himself in Memphis try to chain himself to the goal, I think. I mean, that's what he's doing to A-Rod and Mark Lloyd right now. He's like put a chain around everything. They can't do anything. They need to find Jamie Foxx and get Django unchained.
Jack Borman.
Yeah, Ron. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, I mean, they're 3-2 in their last 5 against the Nuggets. Since the start of last season, they're 4-2 against the Nuggets when Nas and Jaden both play. And the most important part of beating Denver is slowing down Nikola Jokic. The Timberwolves have held him under 50% shooting in 3 of the last 4 games, held him to 5 or less assists in each of the last 3. And they've won the Jokic meetings in 3 of the last 5 games, and they've won the game when they win the Jokic minutes. And they're uniquely equipped to defend Jokic, in that you can put Karl Anthony Towns, Kyle Anderson, or Nasre Reed on Nikola Jokic, with Rudy Gobert kind of playing off of Aaron Gordon. And then you have any of Jaden, or Ant on Jamal Murray is, you know, pretty good. And you know, the Nuggets don't really have anybody to guard Ant. You know, Aaron Gordon's got the size and the strength to guard Ant, but he doesn't have the quickness. And KCP has the quickness, but doesn't have the size or the strength. And so when you think about, you know, those two things, I think that the Timberwolves have to have a lot of confidence, especially considering that they've played the Nuggets so tough, at such shorthandedly. When you think about last year, they didn't have Nas and Jaden, and then Kyle got hurt, and Karl and Rudy both were nowhere near 100%. And then, you know, this year they've played him without Karl, they've played him without Rudy and Nas in that one game. So yeah, it's hard not to be confident if you're the Timberwolves.
They've blown them out twice when they were mostly full strength, and then they took them to the buzzer when they had no bigs. So you gotta like that. Now we'll see what happens in this next Nuggets game, because I have a feeling the Nuggets will conduct themselves a little better with Jamal Murray in the lineup. It's hard to judge them without him. If they play in the playoffs, I don't care who has home court. I think both teams can win, home, road, whatever. I'm just curious, when are you meeting them? Are you meeting them in the second round or the third round? Because if it's the third round, have you just come off a 7-game battle with the Thunder? Like, which team is fresh? Which team has the legs? Which team has played like 2 grinded out 7-game series, and which team has like made quick work of their earlier opponents? I think that's going to be key, just with attrition, as to when you play them in the playoffs. We end the show, as we always end the show, with Predict the Week, and it's another busy one for the Timberwolves. 4 games: Raptors tonight, at the Suns Friday, at the Lakers Sunday, and then the Wizards back at home on Tuesday. Ron Johnson, Predict the Week.
It feels kind of cliche to just keep going 3-1, but I feel like 3-1. And I don't want to say this. I hate to say this, but I think Reggie's Lakers might be the one hiccup in this. It feels like a team where LeBron is kind of realized. I mean, he said it a few times now that, this might be the end. He doesn't know how much more he has left. So I don't feel like this is a time where he's going to relax and kind of like just say, oh, we got next year. We'll see what the draft brings us. Let me and Ant get back and let's start all over again. It feels like he's really trying to push the issue to get into that play-in game to make sure he has a chance to go up. Because honestly, the Lakers versus any of these top three teams right now, especially the Timberwolves and the Thunder, I think the Lakers feel like they can win that series. I don't know about the Nuggets, but I think the Lakers feel like, if we get the Timberwolves or the Thunder in that first round, we could probably win this if we get that 8th seed or 9th or 7th seed. So I think that's the one hiccup. So I'm going to go 3-1.
And I believe 3-1 was the correct answer last week. I think we all said that except Jack, who went 4-0. Jack, the Bulls game, man. The Bulls game.
Well, I was right about the Denver game, so I feel like that's a win for
Counts
me.
for something.
But yeah, I'm going to go 4-0 again. I just have to be a little contrarian, I think.
You have no respect for the Lakers, Jack.
Yeah, they're old. I got no respect for teams that are old. No, I'm just kidding, Reg. No, but yeah, I just think that the Wolves are going to lock in, and who knows, we may have Karl Anthony Towns for that fourth game against the Wizards, or that rematch against Denver afterwards. So I think that there's just a lot of good vibes going around right now with the Wolves, and I think Phoenix is a team that has really, really struggled, especially at home, especially late in big games against good teams. So yeah, I like the Wolves.
Reg.
I'm going to go 2-2. I think they can beat the Raptors.
Ooh.
I think it'll be a little tough against the Suns and the Lakers. And then I think they can definitely stomp all over Washington. And
now I hope they go 4-0. I hope they beat the Lakers by 30.
Oh, wow. Wow. The hate. That's all right. Look, all they got to do when they play against Washington is just have a baddie on the sideline, and they'll take Washington out of that game. Jordan might not even have to play him much.
I don't know. You never know, though. Jordan Poole might go for 50 if you put somebody in the stands. Like, you got to be careful with that.
I looked at this for a long time this morning, and I think there's actually a path where the Wolves could lose both of the West Coast games and still win the West, because the Nuggets, they play the Nuggets, right? They have to beat the Nuggets. And if they beat the gimmies, the Raptors, the Wizards, Suns at home to end the year, there's actually a very credible path to the Wolves losing those two games, winning the rest, and still winning the West. So I think that they could afford to slip up in both of those games. I'm going to say 2-2, not to say that they're like mailing it in. I just think that this is going to be their last really tough trip of the year. Those other two teams have a lot of urgency. I'm going to say 2-2, and I hope I'm wrong.
I'm sorry, Sam. I know there's a basketball show, but Stephon Diggs is going to be traded to the Texans.
Yeah, that's going to be the lead topic on the Minnesota football party tomorrow.
For all the Minnesota fans, Stephon was a hooper.
Is this vindication?
He's headed to
the
Texans.
Vikings moving on from Diggs the first time.
DJ Stroud,
Jack Borman, Reggie Wilson. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Thanks for joining us live today. New experiment here on the Minnesota basketball party. We appreciate it. Check out Jack Borman on the postcast with Luke Inman, and check us out next Wednesday, talking Wolves on Locked On Sports Minnesota.